Federal agents walked into our manufacturing facility at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I know the exact time because I was calibrating a torque wrench when our assistant manager came sprinting across the shop floor, her face white as primer paint. "Howard," she gasped, "there are men in suits asking for you. They have badges." I set down the wrench. The tool measures rotational force in precise increments. When something's out of specification, you adjust it until the readings align. Simple process. Clear results. I walked toward the front office, my boots making steady sounds against the concrete, thinking about how some problems require different kinds of calibration. My name is Howard Garrett. Everyone calls me Howie. I'm 49 years old and I've been working at Precision Dynamics Corporation for 15 years. Before that, I spent 12 years in the Army as a logistics sergeant. When people ask what I do, I tell them I'm a senior quality control manager at a defense contractor. What that really means is I make sure the parts we manufacture for the military meet exact specifications. When a helicopter needs a replacement component or a missile system requires a specific bolt, those parts have to be perfect. Lives depend on the work we do. The federal agents were waiting in the conference room, 2 of them. Department of Labor investigator with gray hair and sharp eyes. DoD Inspector General representative in a Navy suit. They had folders. Lots of folders. They introduced themselves and asked me to sit down. "Mr. Garrett, we understand you filed complaints with our offices regarding wage violations and quality control issues." I nodded. "Yes, sir." Both complaints documented the same underlying problem. "Walk us through what happened." So I did. I told them about Nicole Stanton, our department manager who'd arrived 18 months earlier with an MBA and a mandate to cut costs. I explained how she'd reclassified 15 experienced employees from hourly to salary exempt, eliminating overtime pay while maintaining the same 60 to 70-hour work schedules. I described the declining quality metrics, the safety incidents, the systematic wage theft disguised as promotions. But to understand why I was sitting in that room with federal investigators, you need to know how we got there. The real story started 18 months earlier on a Monday morning when Nicole first walked into our facility. Nicole Stanton was 32, sharp-dressed, with hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. She carried a tablet everywhere and took notes constantly. During her first week, she scheduled individual meetings with every supervisor and senior technician. When my turn came, she asked about my background, my responsibilities, my team's productivity metrics. "Impressive record, Howard," she said, scrolling through my personnel file. 15 years here, military background, excellent performance reviews. You're exactly the kind of experienced leadership we need to take this department to the next level. I managed a team of 12 quality control technicians. We tested components for defense contracts, verified specifications, documented compliance with military standards. Our work required precision, attention to detail, and strict adherence to protocols. We caught defects that could compromise mission-critical equipment. We ensured every part that left our facility met the exact tolerances specified in government contracts. Nicole spent her first 3 months observing our operations, measuring productivity, analyzing cost structures. She'd walk through the facility with that tablet, always calculating something. She'd smile and ask how everyone was doing, but her eyes were doing math. She was figuring out where she could trim expenses. Then came the department meeting. Nicole stood at the front of our break room with a printed presentation because we didn't have a projector in that building. "I've been reviewing everyone's classifications," she announced, "and I'm excited to offer some promotions." My name was on the list. Senior Quality Control Manager, salaried position, $67,000 annually. After the meeting, I did the calculations. I'd been making $62,000 with regular overtime, typically earning around $72,000 per year, working 50 to 55 hours weekly. The new salary sounded like a raise until you realized I'd be working the same hours without overtime pay. I went to Nicole's office the next morning. I had questions about the salary structure. "What's on your mind, Howard? The hourly breakdown seems lower than what I was earning before with overtime." "You're salaried now," she said, leaning forward. "You're not paid by the hour anymore. You're paid for the value you bring. This is a step up. More responsibility, more prestige. What additional responsibilities am I getting? Strategic quality management. You'll have more autonomy, more decision-making authority. I'd been doing quality control for 15 years. Military training plus civilian experience. I knew every specification, every tolerance requirement, every testing protocol in our contracts. Nothing about my actual job duties was changing. I was still inspecting parts, managing testing schedules, ensuring compliance with federal standards. "Can I stay hourly?" I asked. Her expression shifted slightly. "Howard, I'm offering you growth here. Don't you want to advance in your career?" The way she phrased it made me feel like I'd suggested something unreasonable, like I'd recommended we stop checking tolerances on missile components. I felt the heat climb up my neck, but kept my voice level. I'll consider it. You have until Friday, she said. I need to finalize the paperwork. I went home that evening and sat in my garage workshop, trying to decide if I was being ungrateful or practical. My divorce had been finalized 3 years earlier, and my daughter Emma was in her sophomore year at State University. College expenses weren't decreasing. The extra $5,000 annually would help, but losing overtime compensation would cost more than I'd gain. Still, Nicole's words kept circulating. Career growth, advancement, increased responsibility. On Friday, I accepted the promotion. So did the other 14 people who'd been reclassified. The first month wasn't problematic. We worked 45 to 50 hours, normal for our industry during busy contract periods. The second month, Nicole started scheduling mandatory weekend quality audits. We need to verify specifications on the new defense contracts. She'd announce Friday afternoons, everyone in tomorrow morning. Weekend work became routine. Then Nicole began extending our daily schedules. We're behind on the Johnson contract testing, she'd say. Need everyone to stay until we clear the backlog. By the fourth month, we were consistently working 60 to 65 hours weekly. I started documenting everything in a composition notebook I kept at home: date, hours worked, specific tasks completed, safety incidents. I recorded every conversation where Nicole implied someone might lose their promotion if they didn't participate in weekend work. Every comment about team players and commitment to excellence. During those extended weeks, I noticed something troubling. Quality metrics were declining. When you work people 65, 70 hours weekly, fatigue affects precision. Concentration suffers. I documented incidents where parts didn't meet mil-spec tolerances because technicians were too exhausted to perform proper calibrations. 3 separate occasions where torque specifications were incorrect. 2 instances of incorrect material certifications. 1 case where a component failed stress testing because the initial inspection missed a surface defect. These weren't acceptable margins of error. These were systematic failures resulting from overworked personnel. I also discovered something about Nicole's compensation structure. Someone from accounting mentioned she'd received a substantial bonus at the end of the fiscal year. Department costs had dropped 42% under her management. When 15 experienced employees who previously earned overtime were working identical hours for straight salary, that represented significant labor cost savings. Money that made Nicole appear to be an exceptional manager who understood operational efficiency. That's when the situation became clear. This wasn't about promoting us or recognizing our contributions. This was about reclassifying employees to eliminate overtime expenses while maintaining identical productivity demands. Nicole was generating cost savings by systematically underpaying experienced workers. I spent a weekend researching the Fair Labor Standards Act, specifically the exemption criteria for salaried employees. Military training teaches you to understand regulations before making tactical decisions. To be legally classified as exempt from overtime, employees must meet specific requirements. Primary duties must involve management of 2 or more people, or you must exercise discretion and independent judgment regarding significant business matters. I managed a team, but my primary function remained quality control testing. I followed established procedures and military specifications. I didn't make policy decisions or exercise business discretion. I verified that components met predetermined standards. Critical work, but not exempt work under federal guidelines. I scheduled a meeting with Patricia Valdez, our HR director. Her office contained certificates from various HR training programs and smelled like vanilla air freshener. I explained the situation carefully, avoiding accusations. I suggested there might be classification errors affecting several employees. We'll examine this, Patricia said, making notes. Our legal team reviews all position classifications. Everything should be compliant, but I'll verify. 2 weeks passed. Nothing changed. I continued working 60-hour weeks for the same salary. I requested another meeting, bringing documentation this time. FLSA guideline printouts, breakdown of my actual daily responsibilities, timesheet examples showing consistent 60-plus hour weeks. Our attorneys have reviewed all positions, Patricia stated. You're correctly classified. Your duties qualify for exemption. I follow established testing procedures, I responded. I don't make business decisions. I verify components meet military specifications. You exercise professional judgment. You make determinations about quality standards. I follow specifications provided in contracts. The system indicates which tests to perform based on part numbers. I verify results match requirements. That requires professional judgment, she said, as if reading from prepared text. I left feeling diminished. 6 weeks later, I scheduled a third meeting. By then, Nicole had implemented 4 weekend audits in 1 month. I'd worked 62 hours 1 week, 67 the next, then 71. My body protested constantly. My house remained cluttered because I lacked time for basic maintenance. I'd missed Emma's college events due to mandatory weekend work. I'm working 70-hour weeks for compensation equivalent to what I earned 5 years ago, I told Patricia. This violates federal regulations. I've researched the law. I've documented everything systematically. This situation requires correction. Patricia didn't take notes. She observed me with an expression I couldn't interpret. Fatigue, perhaps, or irritation. It's not a priority right now, she said. I walked to my truck and sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes. I wasn't experiencing the emotional response you might expect. I was calculating. Like calibrating equipment when you identify which adjustments will correct the malfunction. That evening, I opened my laptop at the kitchen table. I'd examined the Department of Labor website previously, but never seriously considered filing complaints. That approach seemed confrontational, like deploying heavy artillery instead of negotiating, but 3 conversations through proper channels had accomplished nothing. 3 attempts at internal resolution had been dismissed. The complaint form required comprehensive information. Employee details, employer information, violation descriptions, supporting documentation. I completed it methodically, ensuring accuracy in every detail. I listed every hour worked during the previous 14 months. I attached my position description. I explained my daily tasks precisely. Then I added something crucial that I'd discovered through research. I documented Nicole's bonus structure, directly connected to department cost reduction. She possessed financial incentives to misclassify employees. Her 42% cost savings derived from unpaid labor, not operational improvements. But my concerns extended beyond wage theft. During those 70-hour weeks, I'd observed quality degradation. Safety incidents had increased 340% from the previous year. Compunsons were failing tolerance checks at unprecedented rates. We were compromising the standards that secured our defense contracts. I accessed the Department of Defense Inspector General website. As a defense contractor, we operated under federal oversight. Falsifying quality reports or compromising mil-spec standards on government contracts constituted federal violations, not merely labor disputes. I submitted both complaints at 2:30 a.m. Department of Labor for wage violations. DoD IG for quality control compromises affecting defense contracts. Then I closed the laptop and attempted sleep. 4 days elapsed. I reported to work and performed quality inspections as if nothing had changed, while knowing I'd initiated federal investigations that could transform everything. I monitored for responses, phone calls, emails, acknowledgments that my complaints were received. Nothing arrived initially. I questioned whether I'd completed the process correctly. Then Tuesday afternoon, Nicole's assistant sprinted across the facility. Actually sprinting, abandoning her usual composed pace designed to appear busy but controlled. "Where's Patricia?" she shouted. "Federal agents are here. They're requesting payroll records and quality control documentation from multiple departments." I was calibrating measurement equipment when she announced this. The device gauges dimensional accuracy in thousandths of inches. I adjusted settings slowly, precisely, despite my hands wanting to shake. Federal agencies don't schedule appointments. My research had confirmed this. They don't provide advance notice or allow preparation time. They arrive with legal authority and begin immediate investigations. 1 hour later, footsteps approached my workstation. Patricia stood there with someone from legal I'd never encountered. Both appeared to have aged considerably during the previous 90 minutes. "Why didn't you inform us you'd contacted federal authorities?" Patricia's voice sounded different. Higher pitch, constrained. "I informed you 3 times. You didn't mention filing formal complaints with the Labor Board and Inspector General. You stated my concerns weren't prioritized. I prioritized them." The legal representative stepped forward. "This creates significant complications, Howard. We could have addressed this internally. Now federal investigators are requesting documentation for multiple departments and questioning our defense contract compliance. I worked 70-hour weeks for 14 months without proper compensation. I reported declining quality standards affecting military equipment. I utilized correct channels 3 times. What alternative did you suggest?" They departed without additional comment. The investigation consumed 4 months. The entire facility atmosphere changed during this period. Conversations became quieter, movements more cautious. Nicole ceased her facility walkthrough inspections, remaining in her office with the door closed. Federal investigators returned 6 additional times. They interviewed personnel, examined time records, requested emails and memos regarding classification policies and quality control procedures. I was interviewed twice. Once by Labor Board investigators about wage practices, once by DoD personnel about quality standards and safety protocols. They questioned my daily responsibilities, work hours, whether anyone had explicitly prohibited overtime compensation. I provided complete information, showed them my notebook containing 14 months of detailed time documentation. Supplied dates of my 3 HR meetings. Explained how 15 department employees had been identically reclassified. Did you observe correlations between classification changes and quality metrics? The DoD investigator asked. She appeared approximately 45, with short gray hair and eyes suggesting extensive experience with various excuses. Quality incidents increased 340% following reclassifications. I responded. Fatigue compromises precision. Extended work schedules generate errors. Did your manager receive compensation connected to cost reduction? Affirmative. She received substantial bonuses. Department costs decreased 42%. The investigator recorded notes. This information proves helpful. 4 months and 3 weeks after federal investigators initially appeared, an email was distributed to everyone in my department. Meeting scheduled for 3 p.m. in the conference room. Attendance mandatory. We assembled at the scheduled time. All 15 employees who'd been reclassified, plus several personnel from other departments I recognized but rarely interacted with. Management attended. HR attended. Someone from corporate participated via video conference, and a legal representative sat at the far end of the table wearing an expression suggesting physical discomfort. The corporate representative addressed us first. Federal authorities have completed their investigation into classification practices and quality control procedures. They've determined that certain positions were incorrectly classified as exempt from overtime pay. Additionally, there were findings related to quality control protocols on defense contracts. My breathing remained steady, more controlled than it had been in months. The company is required to pay back wages for all unpaid overtime worked during the period of misclassification. We're also implementing immediate corrective measures to ensure proper classification and quality standards going forward. She paused, consulting notes. Nicole Stanton is no longer with the company. We're also facing federal penalties related to defense contract compliance issues. Nobody questioned anything. We absorbed the information in silence. Back wages, Nicole terminated. Federal penalties. 2 days later, an envelope appeared on my workstation. Inside was a detailed letter with calculations. Hours worked, overtime owed, back pay total, $31,200, and that represented what they'd stolen from me over 14 months. 3 days after that revelation, someone from accounting explained what had actually occurred. The explanation came quietly in the parking lot, delivered like classified information. The DoD investigation had discovered Nicole had been falsifying quality reports to conceal the increase in defective components. The federal penalties weren't solely about labor violations. They concerned compromising defense contracts. Nicole wasn't just terminated. She was facing federal charges. The company had lost $47 million in defense contracts and was demanding she return $240,000 in bonuses accumulated over 3 years. The back paychecks arrived the following week, $31,200. I deposited it immediately. Money I'd already earned months earlier. Compensation that should have been mine originally. A month later, corporate brought in a new department manager. Gloria Martinez, late 40s, former military, 20 years of defense contractor experience. Her first action was convening a department meeting. I've reviewed all your positions, she announced, effective immediately. Everyone who was classified as exempt is being reclassified as hourly. You'll track your time. You'll be compensated for every hour you work. Overtime will be paid at the proper rates. Someone asked about retaining the senior titles. You can keep the titles, Gloria said. But titles matter less than fair compensation. You perform good work. You should be paid appropriately for it. 6 weeks later, Gloria requested a meeting with me. Howard, I'm promoting you to Quality Control Department Head. You'll oversee quality standards for all defense contracts. Your team demonstrated exceptional work maintaining standards under difficult circumstances. Simple announcement. Direct communication. The way it should have functioned from the beginning. I continue working at Precision Dynamics. I still conduct quality inspections. I still ensure parts meet military specifications. But now when I work 50 hours, I receive compensation for 50 hours. When I work 40, I'm paid for 40. The system operates honestly again. Patricia transferred to a different facility 6 weeks after the investigation concluded. Someone mentioned she requested the transfer. Someone else suggested management had recommended it. Regardless, she was gone. Nicole's office remained empty for 3 months. They eventually converted it into additional storage space for quality control equipment. Sometimes I walk past and observe through the door. Testing equipment, calibration tools, measurement devices, no person, no nameplate, just precision instruments where someone used to calculate how much money they could save by stealing from the people who worked for them. The other 14 employees who'd been misclassified received their back pay as well. Amounts varied based on hours worked and duration of misclassification. The total the company paid out was $850,000. $850,000 in stolen wages they were required to return because one person finally stopped requesting nicely and started demanding legally. During those 4 months of investigation, I learned something about myself that I hadn't fully understood before. I'd spent 12 years in the Army learning that systems function when people follow protocols correctly. When those systems fail, it's usually because someone is violating the protocols for personal benefit. The solution isn't to abandon the system. The solution is to engage the oversight mechanisms designed to correct the violations. Corporate systems include oversight mechanisms for the same reason military systems do, because authority without accountability leads to abuse. When internal oversight fails, external oversight exists. When local authority refuses to address problems, federal authority will. People occasionally ask whether I was concerned about filing those complaints, whether I worried about retaliation or job loss. The answer is yes, I was apprehensive. But I was also exhausted from working 70 hours and being compensated for 40, exhausted from watching quality standards deteriorate because personnel were too fatigued to perform precision work. Exhausted from requesting basic fairness and being informed it wasn't prioritized. Sometimes, making something a priority means removing it from someone else's authority and placing it under the jurisdiction of people who actually care about resolution. The system functions if you understand which components of the system to engage. Emma graduated from State University last spring. She attended the ceremony wearing her cap and gown, walking across that stage to receive her diploma. I was there in the audience, sitting in the 4th row, watching my daughter achieve something significant. I was able to attend because I wasn't working a mandatory weekend quality audit. I was able to afford the celebration dinner afterward because I'd been compensated fairly for my work during the preceding months. That back pay made a difference in ways beyond the immediate financial relief. It represented something larger. It demonstrated that systematic theft of wages isn't sustainable when workers understand their rights and know how to exercise them effectively. The quality metrics at Precision Dynamics have returned to acceptable levels. Safety incidents decreased to normal ranges once we resumed reasonable work schedules. Our defense contracts were renewed after we demonstrated compliance with federal standards. The company learned that genuine efficiency comes from proper management practices, not from exploiting experienced workers. Nicole faced federal sentencing 8 months after her termination. Someone mentioned she received a 2-year sentence for defense contract fraud. Someone else said she was required to pay additional fines beyond the bonus repayment. I didn't follow those details closely. Once the investigation concluded and justice was served, I focused on moving forward rather than monitoring her consequences. The federal agents who walked into our facility that Tuesday afternoon weren't there to create problems. They were there to solve problems that internal systems had failed to address. What struck me most about the entire experience wasn't the money, though $31,200 makes a significant difference when you're supporting a college student and managing a household on your own. What struck me was how predictable the whole process became once I understood which tools were available and how to use them correctly. Every step followed a logical sequence: document the violations, research the applicable laws, file complaints with the appropriate authorities, provide evidence when requested, wait for the investigation to run its course. The system worked exactly as designed once I engaged it properly. During those investigation months, I had conversations with coworkers that revealed how widespread this problem had become across different industries. My neighbor works at a manufacturing plant 20 minutes away. Same situation. Hourly employees reclassified as salary exempt, working 60-hour weeks without overtime compensation. My brother-in-law experienced identical treatment at a logistics company in another state. Management teams nationwide were implementing the same wage theft strategies. These weren't isolated incidents or coincidental management decisions. This was a systematic approach to reducing labor costs by exploiting classification loopholes and hoping workers wouldn't understand their rights well enough to fight back effectively. The documentation process I developed during those 14 months proved crucial during the investigation. Every hour recorded, every conversation noted, every incident cataloged. Military training emphasizes the importance of maintaining accurate records because you never know which details will become relevant later. That discipline served me well in civilian circumstances, but documentation alone wasn't sufficient. Understanding the legal framework was equally important. Too many workers know something unfair is happening but don't know which laws apply or which authorities have jurisdiction. They file complaints with the wrong agencies or use procedures that don't address their specific situations. I spent considerable time researching before filing those complaints because I wanted to ensure I was engaging the correct oversight mechanisms. Labor violations required Department of Labor involvement. Defense contract issues required DoD Inspector General oversight. Different problems, different authorities, different processes. The investigation revealed that Nicole's scheme extended beyond our department. She'd implemented identical reclassifications across multiple divisions, affecting 47 employees total. The company's back pay liability reached $2.1 million when all departments were included. Federal penalties for the defense contract violations added another $3.8 million in fines and lost business. One person's decision to systematically document violations and file appropriate complaints resulted in $5.9 million in consequences for the company and justice for 47 workers. That's the leverage available when you understand how to engage federal oversight properly. Gloria Martinez proved to be the kind of manager we should have had from the beginning. She'd managed quality control operations at 3 other defense contractors and understood both the technical requirements and the personnel management necessary to meet those standards effectively. Under her leadership, our department's productivity increased 23% while maintaining proper compensation and reasonable work schedules. She implemented rotating weekend coverage so no one worked excessive consecutive hours. She established clear criteria for overtime authorization and ensured all extended hours were compensated appropriately. She created documentation standards that protected both workers and the company from future compliance issues. Most importantly, she demonstrated that operational efficiency and fair treatment aren't mutually exclusive. Good management practices produce better results than exploitative ones. Workers perform better when they're compensated fairly and treated with respect. 6 months after the investigation concluded, our facility received recognition from the Department of Defense for exceptional quality standards on a critical missile component contract. We'd achieved 99.7% specification compliance, the highest rating in the company's history. That recognition came from workers who were being paid properly for their expertise and effort. The recognition ceremony took place in our main conference room with representatives from corporate headquarters and the DoD contracting office present. They presented a plaque acknowledging our outstanding performance and mentioned specifically that our quality metrics had improved dramatically over the past year. I thought about Nicole during that ceremony. Her approach had prioritized short-term cost reduction over sustainable performance. The wage theft saved money initially, but ultimately cost the company millions in penalties and lost contracts. Her bonuses were based on quarterly cost reductions rather than long-term operational success. Sustainable business practices require fair compensation for skilled workers. Defense contracts demand precision that comes from experienced personnel who take pride in their work. You can't achieve those standards by exploiting and exhausting your workforce. Emma visited the facility last month to see where I work. She'd heard about the investigation and wanted to understand what had happened. I showed her the quality control equipment, explained the testing procedures, described how we ensure military components meet exact specifications. "You could have just found another job," she said as we stood in front of the calibration station where I'd been working when the federal agents arrived. "I could have," I agreed, "but that wouldn't have solved the problem for anyone else, and it wouldn't have prevented the next manager from implementing the same scheme." She nodded, understanding the principle involved. Sometimes you have to address systematic problems systematically rather than just escaping them individually. The composition notebook where I documented everything sits in my desk drawer at home now. 14 months of detailed records that proved crucial during the investigation. I keep it as a reminder that documentation matters, that understanding your rights matters, that engaging the correct authorities matters. People occasionally ask whether I would recommend the same approach to others facing similar situations. The answer is absolutely, provided they understand the commitment involved. Filing federal complaints isn't a quick solution. Investigations take months. You need substantial documentation to support your claims. You need to understand which laws apply to your specific situation. But when internal systems fail to address systematic violations, external oversight exists for exactly those circumstances. The process works when you engage it correctly. I still calibrate equipment daily, ensuring measurements align with specifications. When something's out of tolerance, you adjust it until the readings are correct. Simple process. Reliable results. Sometimes workplace problems require the same systematic approach to achieve proper calibration. The system works if you know how to work the system properly. Sometimes that's all the justice you need. If this resonates with your experience, if you felt dismissed when raising legitimate workplace concerns, understand that federal oversight mechanisms exist for exactly these situations. Document everything systematically. Research the applicable laws thoroughly. File complaints with the correct authorities. The tools for justice are available when you know how to access them properly. Your workplace rights matter. Your documentation matters. Your willingness to engage the system properly can make the difference not just for yourself, but for everyone working alongside you.